Welcome back to the channel. Well, if you followed my channel for any length of time, you know that for about the last 5 years, since X-Plane 11 offered multiple monitor support with geometrically correct views, I've spent a lot of time making videos and talking about how to implement that in an effective way, and also using Air Manager and other panels to complement that, as you see in this video on X-Plane, to create interactive panels to go along with the scenery only displayed on the large screen TVs. Now, because Microsoft Flight Simulator didn't offer support for multiple monitors, aside from some initial testing, most of my flying in Microsoft Flight Simulator has been in VR. The scenery is obviously excellent, and it's a great experience, even though the VR implementation could be better. I've really enjoyed it, but I've stayed away from flying with the LCD screens because that one screen just doesn't do it for me anymore. So I'm happy to tell you that as of the Sim Update 10 beta, which I was brave enough to try a couple days ago, there is some support for the multiple monitors, and I've had a chance to get a first initial look at it. I'd like to share my first impressions with you and tell you where I think it might go. So as you can see in this footage, it really does work with Microsoft Flight Simulator. Here I have set up 3 monitors. Now, the problem is Microsoft, or Asobo I should say, doesn't like to document things in betas very much. I can understand writing in a foreign language for the guys in France. It probably isn't a lot of fun, but it is kind of a puzzle we're trying to solve, and we're trying to figure out how to set this thing up based on the interface. And it's not quite as straightforward as X-Plane was. Now that hopefully will change with time, but right now there's a few conundrums that we're trying to solve, trying to figure out exactly how to set up the interface. But I think you'll see that the results really are not half bad. The scenery is so good and the views are so compelling that any little bit of mismatch along the edges is not that bad. I will also caution you against judging the quality of the visuals based on my video for a couple reasons. First of all, I learned the hard way when you're buying big screen TVs for a simulator, try to find them with a matte finish. You'll see reflections of the other screens on screens, and it does distract slightly from the quality. In a darkened room it's not too bad, but it's still noticeable. So if you can find a matte finish for your big screen TVs, that's probably much better. Also, you want the TVs to match exactly, because sometimes the color grading will be different even from different lots. So I would buy 3 TVs at the same time. The other problem is that there's only one point in space where all the screens will look correct, and I'll demonstrate later what happens if your head elevation rises or descends or moves left or right. There's really only one eye position that'll make everything look right, and a slight movement, and I can't hold that iPhone in the exact right place the whole time. So sometimes you'll see mismatches of roads and lines and horizon lines, and some of that is for real and some of it's because I can't hold the phone in my hand in one hand and fly with the other. Fortunately, when you're seated, your head stays in the same position, so this is not a problem. So let's take a look at the interface that's provided in the beta to set this up. If we go to General Options, in the Graphics tab you're going to want to set full screen, and I suggest 1920 by 1080. That still gives you better resolution than any VR system I know, and driving 3 4K monitors just isn't practical. The rest of the graphics settings really don't affect setting up the 3 monitors, so those are at your choice. You want to look at the camera though, and you're going to want to set the zoom. Now if we scroll down here, you'll see the line zoom there, 3 from the top right there, and there's a slider. It goes from 0 to 100. So we decided to do a little experiment to see if there was a relationship between the zoom and the field of view. And a guy on Simstrumentation web page, a page for Air Manager, MSFS guys, he made the scenery where he put this row of poles in a circle around the pilot head position, and we tried zooming in and trying to see if there was a relationship between the different zoom levels. This is what we came up with. You can see for each zoom factor the actual displayed field of view that's on the monitor, and that gives us some idea. Now normally on my setup I've used a 60-degree field of view on 3 monitors. So you can see here that if the eye is in a position which can be calculated by the formula you see on the screen, if it's at a position where the actual visual field of view across the edges from edge to edge of the monitor is equal to the visual field of view that is presented on the monitor, then it's going to appear to be in life size. If you're further away, of course, it's going to look smaller than life size, and if you're closer, it'll be larger. So you can see if we take 3 of these monitors and rotate the left and right by 60 degrees in opposite directions, you have a perfect view of each monitor centered. It's perpendicular and centered on the monitor, and it has a field of view equal to the field of view that's displayed. It would give you 180 degrees field of view. And you can see there is a certain distance that can be calculated. In this case it's 0.866 times the width of the monitor for this 60 degrees. That gives you the perfect viewing position. So in X-plane it was pretty simple. You set the left rotation to -60, the right monitor to +60, and then with a 60-degree field of view on each monitor you have it set, and it looks perfect. Unfortunately, it's not quite so easy with Microsoft Flight Simulator. In fact, I tried using 60-degree and -60-degree rotation, and things didn't line up at all, and the edges didn't even come close. It turns out that 90 degrees and -90 degrees seem to work. So maybe they're measuring the total field of view. Maybe 90 degrees left and 90 degrees right would give 180, and then it looks good on my monitors. I'm not sure. We're going to have to wait for documentation. But I'll show you my settings, and you can get started. It is possible to make this work, and it looks pretty darn good. But before I go on, here's the video that I am referring to that I made quite a number of years ago that goes into a lot of details, and it also talks about the practicalities of fitting all of your gear inside the screens, and it'll give you an idea how big a screen you need to get your cockpit inside the screens and still have a good eye viewing position. Lots of information that you might find usable, and I'll link it above here. So again, on the camera you have to set the zoom, and you can figure that out how you want to do that based on the size of your monitor, your eye position, and I'm still not sure it's going to work mathematically. Here's where you set under the experimental tab where you add new windows. Unfortunately, for some reason they're showing up multiple times here, but you can set the full screen and the resolution. Going to want that probably to match. And then there's positions you can see for rotation. The rotation in the lateral, which would be left and right, and then the vertical and the roll. And you can play around with those, and it didn't require, with a 90, plus 90 and a minus 90, the corrections were fairly small using photos by Kev's screen. He also made another one, which I'll maybe show you here, that even had horizontal lines to help line things up, and I found that quite useful in trying to zero things out. Anyway, once you have those set, you can save those, and you can go back and launch your sim. Once you get back in the hangar view here, you'll be pretty evident from the way the tiles and the floor and the beams line up if things are lined up correctly. You can see here how things line up on both sides, and that's a good sign that you're on the right track, and it's probably going to look all right once you launch the aircraft. So let's give it a try. I'm going to use try to figure out a level place where I'd have a nice flat horizon. I thought about where I went to pilot training in the Air Force. Vance Air Force Base in Enid, Oklahoma. It is flat as a pancake out there, and that'll give us a nice level horizon to match up the joints between the monitors and see how they look. Now I'm just displaying one of the free pre-made panels from Air Manager on my monitor here, my panel in my flight simulator, just to have some instrumentation because I can't see that. This is the Flight Designs little light sport aircraft. I'm going to zoom in here and go along the horizon. You can kind of see how the lines line up. at the monitor boundaries there. And you can take that on around just to give you a little bit clearer view of how that matches up. Now you can see how as I vary the height of the monitor, or my phone, as I said, if I can move that up and down, you can see how the angle tends to bow up and down in a V shape by adjusting the height of the camera. So the eye height is quite important, and once it's adjusted, as long as you stay with the right eye height, those look pretty good. So let's test out my one-handed camera work in flying. Always hard to try to keep things under control and hold the camera at the same time. You can see how flat it is here. Now see, there's a little, the camera height might not be right, but now there it is, and it lines up perfectly, and so do the runways and the taxiways. So it really works quite well. You'll see objects go behind the bezels too, and you can kind of tell if they're set right when things go behind and come out. You can actually make a bezel correction. That's also included in that video that I referred to. It'll tell you how to reduce the field of view just slightly so that there's a slight gap, and then that means objects that pass through the bezel will appear to go in behind the bezel and come out on the other side with the correct position. And you can see it's pretty close here. You can see some of those buildings that are being cut in half by the bezel on the left there, and it looks quite good. So that's really the test, and as I said, you can't judge it too well by the camera technique here, because I'm holding this iPhone by hand, and it has a tendency to be moving up and down a little bit. But all in all, I think this is very effective, and it's going to be exciting when we get it nailed down and we know exactly. It does look like I have pretty much out the wing a 90-degree angle, so I'm really not sure how they measure that at Microsoft. It really would be great to have documentation to understand this. Now this is the TBM flying out over near Lake Tahoe. Again, you get the pretty strong reflections off of those screens, and that does detract quite a bit from the beauty of the view. However, you can see it's still working pretty well. A little misalignment on the monitors there, and that's where it's going to be the most noticeable on the glass displays, this lining up of all the text and so on. Anyway, there's one thing I didn't mention, and that is there's a home cockpit mode setting in the under the camera. It's supposed to eliminate the virtual cockpit. And if you're going to build a cockpit, of course, you don't want to have the virtual cockpit out there. So that seems to not be working yet, but I'm hoping that I'm understanding what that does and looking forward to that. Here you can see beautiful water reflections, and really quite a nice setup, and looking forward to seeing this developed further. As I said, this is an early beta, and you can't rely too much on what I'm showing you here today. But it is worth giving it a try if you have 3 monitors and you want to see how to play around with it. This could get you started. I think this definitely has potential, and it's already working pretty well for a first try. So let's see what happens, and stay tuned. I'm glad to see that they've gotten around to multi-monitor support for home cockpit builders to use. So stay tuned to my channel. Sign up if you're not already subscribed, and I'll keep you posted as this goes on. I'm going to be researching it more, trying to learn as much as we can about it, and eventually have some kind of guidance and help people to get set up as we did for X-Plane. This is it really does make the sim great. If you want to train, virtual reality is just not quite there yet. You need to be able to put your hands on the checklists and all the stuff. That's coming, but for those who still like to use the monitors, this really does vastly improve things, and looking forward to having an opportunity to dig further into this. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you on the next video. Be sure to like, subscribe, and I love your comments. Thank you.